This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke and welcome to this very special midweek Lions preview as we build towards the first test in Brisbane between the British and Irish Lions and the Brumbies. Joining me is former Brumby and Wallaby player Ben Alexander, and from RugbyPass, Finn Morton, who is on the ground in Brisbane. And I'll come to you first, Finn. Give us an update. What is the day like? What is the weather like? And what is the weather going to be like on the first test, or for the first test on Saturday?
Pendy, I can tell you, mate, it's blue skies in Brisbane at the moment, which is quite nice.
Is it hot?
It's not too bad, actually. You know, I'm wearing a jumper and stuff, but I haven't been outside today, actually, but it looks pretty good. So hopefully this sticks around. It's a wee bit of a change up from last week, 6 days ago in Canberra, right, when it was pretty freezing. I struggled that week, Benny. No disrespect to the capital, but that was a tough few days.
And you'll be pleased to know it's still very cold. And Ben Alexander, you'll be pleased to know because you're in Singapore, where I believe it's probably not very cold at all.
Yeah, nice and humid, 30 degrees every day, so no, it's good. Nice and toasty. I have seen a few Lions fans here actually walking the streets. We were in Little India or Arab Street yesterday, saw a few Lions fans walking around, so making the transit out for the first test on Saturday, so that was cool to see.
Very good. Okay, Finn, well, listen, before we come back to Ben to give us the player insights about the week and about at this time of the week what would be happening both inside the Lions and inside the Wallabies, what sort of a week have you had so far in terms of a build-up, in terms of access to players, in terms of interest? What are some of the storylines that you're following at the moment for RugbyPass?
Guys, I can tell you, it feels like it's a proper week, this one, right? Like it's what it's all been building towards. I think there's something exciting about that. The tour games, they've been a lot of fun, but also not quite as competitive, maybe as what we would have liked. But this is the test week. It's game week now, and pretty pumped. A few press conferences to start the week. Obviously, the fitness of some players like Rob Valetini, Will Skelton, big talking points, and even big news last night out of the Raw. Tom Lynagh starting at 10 for the Wallabies, apparently. So we'll be following that this week. But like I said, guys, it's test week. This is what it's all about. So there's definitely a feeling of just excitement amongst the press pack, I think, by the way. Like the press conferences, a bit more competitive. The players, I think they're excited. A bit more on edge maybe as well. But how good.
How many journos are there?
Oh, put me on the spot. There's more than there was last week, put it that way. I think there's more British journos travelling down from the UK, especially for the 3 tests. They haven't quite done the full slog of the whole tour. Fair enough to them. It has been a long few weeks, but I'm going to say between maybe 30 journos, maybe 20. I can't tell you an exact number, but it's been a pretty good turnout.
And what about the atmosphere in Brisbane? Has it caught hold? Has it taken fire?
Oh, I'd like to say so, Pendy. And it's, Brisbane, as a proud Brisbane boy myself, I hope that the city gets around the game this weekend. And I can tell you that a couple of weeks ago for the Queensland Reds game, Caxton Street was absolutely pumping. I said that to Tate McDermott yesterday. We were standing by a lift and I told him that and he was laughing a wee bit. It's, Caxton Street, Queenslanders came out full force for that Reds game and guarantee it'll be the same this week.
All right, so we'll come to that in a moment. But perhaps to you, Ben Alexander, at this time of the week in terms of the build-up to the game, what insights can you give people about what would be happening inside both the Wallabies team and inside the touring British and Irish Lions team?
Yeah, so, we were in 2013, we were in camp on the Sunshine Coast for a few weeks before the first test. So we were kind of isolated from a lot of the build-up, obviously watching all the lead-up matches on telly. But it wasn't, until that first week, the lead-up to the first test. I think it was Wednesday was our day off, and I remember walking down Queen Street Mall with Pat McCabe just to go and get some lunch or something, and every single pub down there was just full of people in red. It was like midday on a Wednesday. We were like, geez, righto, like something special. We'd never seen anything like that, probably outside the World Cup. So we're like, geez, righto, it's on. And there was just, so much excitement leading up to that first week. I think it's probably the most exciting week of the whole tour is the lead up to that first test. probably then the third test and the decider is probably the most nervous just the most intense weeks. Definitely that last week leading up to the week leading up to the third test. But as for the weeks itself, I mean, Tuesdays usually is your big, we used to call it Test Match Tuesday, so it was the day you'd really try and get all your contact, your scrums, your mauls, your tackling practice, a few bumps and bruises, really test the shoulders out, and then that would give you another 3 or 4 days to recover so you're 100% fit and firing on Saturday. So, I think both sides would be testing themselves out physically. The last big training run before Saturday, and then the rest of the week would just be polishing up plays and knowledge. I think both teams will be getting their last bit of work in. Like Finn said, maybe a bit of fitness for some of the guys who are a little bit underdone. Exciting week.
So selection would be known by now inside the team, so people know whether they're in and whether they're out, and it doesn't get announced until Finn, is it right that both teams will be named on Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday. I think the Lions were finding out this morning. That's what Jack Honan said on Tuesday, that they were going to find out Wednesday morning. But I think the Wallabies, they probably already know their team, but Benny can probably attest to that a lot better than I can.
Hang on, sorry, I've got my days. It's Wednesday. I've lost track of what day it is. Yeah, so Wednesday. We would always get told Tuesday before the big session, and then it wouldn't get announced publicly later in the week, so you could run your combinations. But if anyone sees the combinations that are running at training, I mean, it's pretty clear that that'll be the teams for the weekend. You don't really have time to play silly buggers with that. So, the teams and the combinations that go out on Tuesday, 99% of the time are the teams you see out on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's obviously where the Lynagh story has leaked through the Raw last night, that the team's been selected, and Tom Lynagh will line up against the British and Irish Lions. Ben Alexander, with that news, what is your immediate reaction?
I haven't watched enough of him. Obviously, his dad's a legend of the game, not just Australian rugby, world rugby. I really thought Ben Donaldson should have been 10. I think he's really suited to Test footy. Ben Donaldson doesn't set Super Rugby alight, but I was really impressed. I mean, Eddie obviously saw something in him, and I thought Ben Donaldson actually once one of the players that held his head high in the 23 World Cup. So I thought he would, when Noah got injured, I thought Donaldson to start and bring James O'Connor off the bench. To be honest, I haven't seen enough of Lynagh. Huge test for him. Obviously, he's got a tremendous person to sort of ask a few questions late at night. Obviously, he can call his dad anytime. So just tremendously excited for him. Haven't watched enough of him per se, but Joe Schmidt's obviously seen enough of Tom, not just during super season, but in camp, how he's probably prepared himself to think, he's the go-to guy for this first test. Obviously, we've got James O'Connor there, who could probably step up at any moment with very minimal. I guess that's Rabs's the real key attraction with picking Rabs is his experience. He's been there, done that, so he can slip in at any moment with very little prep. Whereas if Tom Lynagh had been leading a lot of the training, knows all the plays, probably from a cohesion perspective, it makes sense picking Tom, who's been in camp for a while and around that squad for about a year. Pretty sure he obviously debuted last year for the Wallabies. I'm a bit surprised to not hear that Ben Donaldson's not starting. I thought, that was sort of my gut instinct, but I'm a forward, so I don't really know what goes on with the backs.
And Finn, what was the reaction, or what is the reaction around the press corps to Tom Lynagh's selection?
Well, I think everyone's going to be a bit surprised. Ben Donaldson certainly seemed like the favourite to wear that 10 jersey, and he was pretty good off the bench against Fiji, right? So it seemed like he was the logical choice to replace Noah. There are a few questions about Tom Lynagh at yesterday's press conference, asked at Tate McDermott, only for it to be revealed probably 30 minutes after that presser by the Raw that apparently Lynagh was going to start at 10. So I guess as a press pack, we haven't actually reacted to it too much amongst ourselves. I've sent a few texts to some mates, and maybe they're a bit surprised as well. But keep in mind, the 3 10s in the squad, like Benny said, you got Tom, Ben, and James O'Connor. O'Connor's only been in the squad since, last Friday, I think, when the squad was announced. And I'm not sure if you guys seen the story, but he only found out that he was in the Wallabies about 1 hour before everyone else did. He went to bed on Thursday night thinking he'd missed the squad, went to Ballymore on Friday as a coach with the Australian Sevens women's development side and Sevens development side, and just happened to run into the Wallabies and Joe Schmidt later in the day, and that's how we found out that he was in the Wallabies. You know, he hasn't been in camp too long. So is starting him against the Lions just was never going to happen. Is he ready to come off the bench even? Considering as well, he averaged 24 minutes a game for the Crusaders this season and played 7 minutes across the semi-final and the final. You know, this is a guy who maybe doesn't quite have the game time as of late. I'm sure he's got the experience, but it does make sense that it's a bit of a shootout between Lynagh and Donaldson, at least for this first test. And who's going to have more impact? Well, it's Ben Donaldson off the bench. He's been there, done it before, more of a utility than Lynagh. So it's a big punt for Joe Schmidt to make, considering Lynagh has played 4 tests all off the bench. But man, can the kid step up? You know, it's an intriguing selection, but this is what Lions series are about, guys. You know, it's heroes become icons, heroes become legends, and Tom Lynagh has the chance to do something very special with the Wallabies this weekend.
So, Ben Alexander, who do you play on the bench? Do you pick Donaldson or do you pick O'Connor?
I think Donaldson. I think you like Finn saying, and the more I think about it, I mean, I just emotionally really want to see Rabs out there playing with him in 2013 and have, observed and it's got to see up close the trials and tribulations of a young man sort of growing and making mistakes on the world stage. I just think it's such a great story. I don't know where I bumped into Rabs. I know we message every now and then on Instagram, and I just, as he's a former teammate and friend, would really like to see Rabs get another crack at it, especially with what happened with Georgie Smith 2013. That kind of fairy tale didn't end well. George was, got knocked out in the first few minutes of the third test. He missed the first 2. Robbie I don't know if George had been injured. I think George had been injured, or he got called in week 2. But the week 2 of after Michael Hooper, what happened? Correct me if I'm wrong. Who started at 7 in that first test? But Georgie Smith got called in late into the Lions squad and then started the third test. So I just see a lot of similarities that maybe Joe Schmidt's just bringing Rabs in and maybe there was some plan. I just find, sorry, Finn, that story you told, I find that too ironic for that not to be planned, that Rabs was coaching and just bumps into the Wallaby coach. Oh, by the way, Rabs, I don't believe that's like. I reckon Joe Schmidt's been planning this for ages to have Rabs.
You know James a lot better than I do. Safe to say, right? So, but that's the story he told the media last week. That he was at the visa office getting his UK visa sorted before going to Leicester, and then happened to run into the Wallabies, who were 100 metres down the road.
What, and they just go, by the way, mate, can you come join us for the Wallabies to Lions series? I mean, the chance, maybe that is true, but the chances of that happening is so small. Well, boys, maybe I'm getting old and cynical in my old age.
Who doesn't love a fairy tale in sport, guys? Let's...
Well, and that's what I want. I want that to happen. I really want that to happen.
Let's be delusional. Let's be delusional and buy into the story. But I agree with you too, Benny. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, when I listened to the audio, saw the vision, I went, geez, really?
A couple of other selections, and it's probably more impacted by injury, but it smells like Rob Valetini is not going to be available, and my gut tells me that Will Skelton won't be available as well. Now, I don't know anything about it, but it's just my waters are telling me that both of those critically important forwards for Australia will be out. If that is right, Ben Alexander, how big a problem is that for Australia?
Yeah, it's big. And I guess I'm a bit disappointed that the Anzac game on the weekend, because apart from those couple of early tries, there was a period of play where we were really bashing the Lions. Lukan, Salakoloto was running over the top of people, Corabetti, Lamape, Pete Samu. We had Shannon Frizzell. We had a really physical team, and it looked like the first time the Lions were under a bit of pressure, but their cohesion and skill were just too good, and was a bit disappointed by the result of that match. But there was just a couple of phases there where I go, geez, the Anzacs are really putting the Lions under some physical pressure for the first time of this tour. And that kind of, that's kind of a recipe with a bit of, a bit more skill and finishing is a recipe to beat this Lions side, is that we have to bash them. We have to be incredibly physical. these guys are going to, they've played more games now. They're going to be more cohesion, better drilled, not the right word, but they've played more together as a group over the last sort of 5-6 weeks. So are we going to be more cohesive than them? Probably not. But can we bash them and be more physical? I think that's a chance, especially with the names that we have, the size of some of our boys. Obviously, the two are the biggest, or the two you named. So for them to be out, that does make me very nervous. My water's, again, too, leaking a bit too, Pemby. And I just think back to, the press conference before the Fiji World Cup match when Eddie said, Skelton and Tupou are out, our two biggest, most physical players. And Rob Valetini is such a great ball carrier, like getting teams on the front foot, by far the best ball carrying forward in Australia. So if Bobby's out, that's a blow. But in saying it's only 1 week, so maybe, it's a 3-match series. So if we do miss them for a week, maybe we've come back from 1-0 down. Maybe we can do it again. So, again, wait for more info. But, I'm very nervous when I hear those guys are out.
And, Finn, your reaction to my speculation?
Your speculation, Pemby, I agree with you that I think Bobby V is going to be out, from what I understand. I don't expect him to be named this week. That said, Will Skelton, he was up for media on Monday. I know Pemby was speaking before. It's not always a proven science that means he's playing, but again, like I said before, let's be a bit delusional, fellas. Let's dare to dream because the Wallabies, they need him. They need Will Skelton. I think they missed them against Fiji. That said, Jeremy Williams, Nick Frost, two very good replacements, potentially to slot in that second row, but Will Skelton would quite literally be a big absence from that Wallabies lineup if he doesn't play. So fingers crossed in that regard. But just to speak on Ben's point, actually, about bashing the Lions, I think we saw shades of that, sure, AUNZ, and even in games like the Brumbies and the Tars as well. But going to the air, I think that's actually more of a focus, or it should be more of a focus for the Wallabies. I think Argentina showed that when they beat the Lions in Dublin, that the Lions can be caught out a little bit under the high ball. So I would love to see Joseph Sua'ali'i out wide a bit more, whether that set piece plays off scrums, lineouts. Let's get him one-on-one. Let's send the ball up in the air and let's have him in a one-on-one challenge for a high ball. Very Israel Folau-esque, but let's use that guy's athleticism as much as we can because it could be pretty effective, I think. Maybe they take a page out of the Springboks' playbook and do some midfield lineouts and stuff. Did you guys see that against Italy and stuff? Pretty interesting from Rossi, but who knows? Anything could happen. But I want to see Joseph under the high ball a little bit.
And what about your views around Joseph Sua'ali'i, Ben Alexander? How critical will the aerial game be, and how important is he to Australia's prospects of challenging the Lions in those wider channels, be it against Freeman, Hugh Jones, the outside backs of the British and Irish Lions?
The high ball's the third, or it's a set piece. It's a part of the game when teams put box kicks up, and if your fullback or winger can get up and secure that, it's a set piece. It is such a critical part of the game, and it's a part we haven't been very good at, to be honest. Like a lot of drop balls, which then allows teams to get into our half. So Kellaway's usually pretty good under the high ball, one of our best. I haven't seen Sua'ali'i too many times under the high ball, but assume his physique and build and athleticism. I mean, how tall is he? 6'5", 6'6"? He's almost as tall as a lock and can jump, unbelievably well. So he's no reason why he can't do a really good job securing those high balls. But traditionally, not a great part of our game, and that the Argies do very well. All Blacks, Springboks all do it very well. And again, people hate box kicking and we want sides to run the ball, but the reality that international footy, it's about scrum, line out, and the kicking game. And the big part of the kicking game is, not just the kicking, it's the receiving of the kick. And if we can't do that part well, I think we're going to be in trouble. We'll let the Lions into our half too much, and then who knows what happens to the scoreboard after that. But going back to the possibility of Sua'ali'i having a huge impact, I think he absolutely can. And I think back to the first test in Brisbane 12 years ago. I mean, Izzy Folau scored 2 tries. It was unbelievable. And I think I've said on the previous episode, remember watching a lot of Izzy for the Storm, had followed his journey through AFL and knowing he was a freak talent and obviously getting to meet him in real life in camp and just what humongous specimen, like absolute specimen. I remember seeing him go up for a high ball. It doesn't compare. Seeing it on telly versus seeing him do that in real life, what a freak is he was, not just with the ball in hand, but how good he was under the high ball. Don't think he got enough credit for that, apart from scoring tries, but diffusing opposition entries into our half. He was unbelievable at it. So Izzy can do it, and I think Sua'ali'i can definitely stamp himself, not just on Australian rugby, but on world rugby as a star to watch. Really, really excited.
So, Finn, you have had the opportunity as well to spend time around the British and Irish Lions camp this week. What's your reporting on what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've felt as you've spent time with the Lions?
Well, I wasn't at this particular press conference, but I will say Henry Pollock's comments from earlier this week, probably the most interesting, talking about the idea that this Lions side, they want to be the best Lions team that's ever toured anywhere. They want to be the best Lions team of all time, and that 3-0 is definitely on the table. On one hand, that comes across as cocky and a bold thing for a 20-year-old to be saying when he's on tour with the Lions for the first time.
Don't bag Henry Pollock. I like Henry Pollock.
Henry's Henry.
I'm going to give him. He can do whatever he likes. He can make as much cut. We need someone to do something. At least he's got a bit of personality. He's got a bit of go in him.
No, because, mate, I was going to say, while that might come across that way to some people, it's also the character we need in this game. But also, Benny, can you imagine if any Wallabies player 12 years ago said, oh, we're going to win the series 2-1, or we're going to lose the series 2-1? Like, you can't be going to a test series expecting to lose, can you? So, of course, Pollock's always going to say, we're going to win 3-0.
And what makes me nervous about him saying that is, okay, maybe he's young and got a bit over-enthusiastic and said it, but that's obviously what they're saying in the camp. That's obviously what he's hearing from Andy Farrell and from the senior players. So that, I think it's a real, maybe he shouldn't have repeated it, or maybe they said, Henry, go for it, you can say that in the media. But I think for me, that's really a reflection of what that squad is thinking. Or the senior guys and what that squad are thinking, and he's sort of hearing it from the senior guys and feeling confident enough to go out and repeat it to the media. So,
Benny, just how important then does that make the first test? Eddie Jones is of a strong belief that this is the match that Australia has to win to stay in the series. His view is that if Australia goes 1-0 down, it could end badly.
Yeah, you look at history. We've come back from 1-0 down. We've blown us. We haven't come back from 1-0 down. 89, did we win the first test in 1989? I can't remember. What happened in that series?
Yeah, we did. I think
we did.
The first test was in Sydney.
And then we lost. And then the Lions came back. So, history would say, you can come back and you can still blow it from losing that first test. But I do agree with Eddie with the squad we've got. We don't have a heap of depth. I don't know if we could dig out a 1-0, be down 1-0 and win the last two. I don't know if we can. So, no, I agree with Eddie. This is going to be massive. I'd like to think we could, even if we do go down this weekend, that we could come back from 1-0 down like the 2001 series. But, the older I get, I think the more we all realise how special that Wallaby era was, that 99 to 2001, 2 side led under the great John Eales. We could be talking for the next 10 minutes about how great that team was and the players, the iconic players in that squad. So, I do agree. I have to agree with Eddie that if we lose this weekend, I would still be hoping, like Finn, that wanting to be a bit delusional and hoping for an amazing fairy tale. But, I don't know. Hate to,
so, Finn, any sort of updates on Mac Hansen? There was some fears around his foot. Blair Kinghorn was carrying some sort of injury. We know that Luke Cowan-Dickey is out. We know that Ringrose is out. We know that they've called for a number of replacements. But in terms of those, Hansen and Kinghorn, is there any update on their availability?
I think there were a few updates last night that Mac Hansen's in doubt for the first test, and so is Blair Kinghorn. Gutted for Mac because he's been brilliant throughout this tour so far, right? And you'd have to think if he was fit, he would be wearing that 23 jumper, I think, for the Lions. He's that type of impact player and utility even if you need him. So But again, he's in doubt. Blair Kinghorn is as well. I do wonder whether we do see Blair Kinghorn again throughout this tour. You guys were obviously at the game last week in Canberra. You would have seen, as soon as he got injured, you could tell it was bad. I think he was punching the ground, or he was certainly down, and he was visibly gutted. He knew immediately right away that it wasn't great. That said, Andy Farrell said post-game in Canberra that I think Blair was on the massage table getting medical attention while singing. He was clearly in good spirits post-game. So, but the update on those two, Pemby, both in doubt, I think, for the first test. But as we've touched on, this Lions squad absolutely stacked, as expected. They're going to have players who are going to step up. So it's just, if it's not Mac, it's going to be someone else.
And Finn, what's the go with the... Sorry, Pemby, can I jump? I also asked Finn about the back row. Big Chesham at 6, normally a lock. Is that what's going to be the makeup of the back row? Because that's... Yeah, they're playing... Chesham really impressed me at 6, even though he's traditionally a lock against the Brums.
Yeah, I think that's definitely gaining traction. Whether that proves to be the case, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I haven't heard any inside word on the Lions back row, to be fair, but I think almost the bigger question is the situation at open side. Now, I think Jack Conan will start at number 8, but at open side, you've got Tom Curry, Jack Morgan, Josh van der Fleer as contenders to wear that 7 jersey. The fact that, 2 of those guys can't make the starting side is insane, unless Jack Morgan plays at 6, but again, I think it'll be Chesham. But the fact that maybe, you'd think Curry or van der Fleer won't make the 23 is pretty wild, and it just is a reflection of how talented that back row is. But I think Jack Morgan, his form in this tour, especially player of the match against the Reds a couple of weeks ago here in Brisbane, I think he should get the crack at that 7 jersey, right? And also, it'd be nice to see a Welshman in that starting 15. So I think do it for Wales, Andy Farrell. But I think Jack Morgan as well definitely deserves it. So wait and see.
We will wait and see, but then that moves us on to the actual occasion itself, and we'll probably wrap it up with this conversation just about the event on Saturday. And I think it's important to put it on the record that it's not Rugby Australia's responsibility, and it is not the Lions organisation's responsibility to create the atmosphere. The atmosphere has to come from the fans. So the fans have got to fire up. The Australian fans have got to get noisy. They've got to get dressed in gold. They've got to get behind their team. They've got to bring the passion. They've got to create the memories for themselves and for everybody else. And the same with the Lions fans. They've been pretty ordinary so far on tour in terms of bringing that atmosphere, bringing that passion. The game in Australia desperately needs this series to light up, and it is the responsibility of the fans to do that. Now, yes, Rugby Australia and the Lions organisation create the environment, and I would hope that the music man, from Adelaide doesn't make it across to Brisbane, and I hope, in fact, the Rugby Australia went and got the music man from Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium in Port Elizabeth last week, who did a great job using the music to support the atmosphere, not overwhelm it, which was what happened in Adelaide and a little bit in Canberra as well. So create the atmosphere, but the responsibility is with the fans. And all of this sitting back going, oh, Rugby Australia did this or the Lions did that, that's a complete nothing. The players will bring their best effort, so the fans have to bring their best effort, and it's about time rugby fans fired up. And if they want to get fired up, all they have to do is go and have a look at the way the South African fans supported their team at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium in Port Elizabeth last week. It was magnificent. So you've been told, Australian fans, you've been told, Lions fans, let's have an occasion, let's have an event, because it is your responsibility, all right? Not anybody else's. And don't look left, don't look right. Don't sort of reach into the cupboard and think, oh, well, I won't wear that jersey. Put the jersey on, get to the game, get fired up, and really create the occasion. And let's hope the players, because if the fans get wired and get lit up for this game, I'm sure that it'll create the atmosphere that will create the occasion. So, Ben Alexander, your views on the creation of atmosphere at the game?
Well, I'm going to be doing my bit to create atmosphere at Changi Airport as I come back, and I'll be doing my bit in Melbourne. But yeah, no, I agree, Pemby. and we spoke about the other
It's
week.
the fans.
But I don't know why they don't feel like they can just be rowdy and yell. And there's something cultural in Australia where we just don't like to go out on a limb and make a bit of noise. We're just so conservative, and I don't know. I can't put my finger on why. I agree that it's just the rugby Australia. They put on the environment, but then the fans have really just got to let rip and show that. So I just hope the excitement of this first test, everyone gets really excited, understands the importance of the occasion, and just get a couple extra beers in here before the game and just let rip, let rip, and then because we loved playing at home. The crowd makes this can be up to a 10-point advantage if the crowd it influences the ref. The ref doesn't like they don't like getting booed, so. It can be the difference between winning and losing, having a really vocal home crowd.
Well, certainly, like the Australians have decided that they're not going to they're not going to contest in the week leading up to the game. They're not out there in the media. They're not generating narratives. They're not trying to create pressure. They're not doing any of that. They've decided that that's not what they're going to do. Now, is that the right or the wrong thing to do? I have very strong opinions about that, having been involved in that part of the game for many, many years. I think it's an absolute opportunity lost. So they're not creating any sort of turbulence for the Lions ecosystem. So they're just allowing them to just go through the week and sleep very comfortably every night. So, okay, that's the choices that they've done. So the fans are going to have more responsibility to try to create some disturbance that's going to put some pressure onto the Lions. But
isn't that because they're trying to ambush them, Pemby? If I was trying to ambush someone, I would let them sleep well at night. And, I would just keep my mouth closed. I mean, yeah.
I wouldn't. I would have been at them. I would have been at them in all sorts of different ways for weeks to try to get some. I think if you leave them to just roll along quite happily, that's just going to get them. Well, I'm not sure we're capable of an ambush, but anyway, we'll leave that to one side. But Finn, I think the other thing that maybe has happened here, but which is where maybe Rugby Australia and the Lions have to take some responsibility, is that the ticket pricing has probably starched the accessibility for people into the games. The tickets are expensive. And so a lot of people can't afford them, and so they can't get to the test matches. So the people who can afford them, perhaps are, of a particular slice of the society that maybe doesn't want to yell and scream and carry on as much as others might be. So, and Finn, you told me a story just as we were having a chat before you got on air that describes some of the ticketing options there for the first test. You might tell us that story.
Basically just my dad here in Brisbane. So I'm back at my family home, which is quite nice to slot back into my old life. And Dad was looking at tickets, and it's quite a different approach to what we're used to down here in Australia, where the ticket price depends on the demand for ticket, in the sense that you won't find out how much you're paying for a couple of days. So, you put your credit card details in today, and there's a price range that they got given basically, and depending on the demand, they might charge you X amount or they might charge you Y. So I guess the fans...
X amount, to my understanding, was around 150 and Y was 450. So there's a distance between the two, and I might be happy to go at 150, but 450?
Yeah, I think I think the fans who are going and who have got tickets, and they've justified their spend and what they're willing to pay. Then for those fans going, then make the most of the opportunity. And Pemby, to go back to your call to action, mate, I think it's fans should wear gold, and it's a message for not just rugby fans but Australians. Right, this is a chance to get behind your national team on a stage which James O'Connor said is bigger than a World Cup, and people who don't follow rugby might not necessarily understand that yet, but they will over the coming weeks, and you don't want to miss out. So,
but we saw at Newcastle the other week against Fiji. I thought the way the Newcastle supporters and the supporters of the Hunter Valley turned up, they did dress in gold. They did create the atmosphere, and it was probably a lot more accessible because there were a lot of kids there. It was an afternoon match and all the rest of it. So, anyway, I just think that just to go back to the point, I do think that the fans have got a big responsibility in this. And let's not complain on Sunday morning, fans, that, the vibe wasn't quite right, because guess what? You are the vibe. You are the people who have got to generate the vibe. So perhaps take Benny Alexander's advice and tune yourself up a little bit, get ready to go there and get involved. But whoever is in charge of the music, please, oh my God, the Adelaide music guy. I wasn't at the game, but I was on the television watching it at home. It was like, oh God, he had his hand stuck on the button and kept playing bang, 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 bang. It was one after other. But anyway, we'll leave that alone. So listen, boys, thank you so much for coming once again. I do have some breaking and enormous news for the Rugby Unity podcast. We are going to preview and review each of the test matches with Eddie Jones as we get his obviously world-class analytical mind, his coaching experience applying. But we are also going to be joined by the great Ewan McKenzie. Ewan McKenzie, the former Wallaby coach, former Queensland Red coach, Wallaby winning player, the architect in many ways in supporting Rod McQueen to bring down the Lions in 2001 was Ewan McKenzie. He will be joining us on the Rugby Unity podcast on Friday with his preview, where both he and Eddie will look at what do the Wallabies have to do to win the game, what do the Lions have to do to win the game. Those two have an incredible history going back to their playing days at Randwick, where they spent years at Randwick, at the Brumbies, and then at the Wallabies working together. They are so close. They finish each other's sentences. They've been working together for many, many years. So it will be a real delight, I think, and a thrill for the audience of Rugby Unity to have those, two of the finest analysts in world rugby looking at the series as part of our preview and review. So that's something to look forward to. Ewan McKenzie returning to rugby. So very excited for that, and delighted, boys, that you could join us once again. Ben Alexander travels safely back from Singapore to Australia. So hopefully we will see you next Wednesday in the studio for our midweek Lions special. And Finn, enjoy the weekend. Say hello to your mum and dad for me. I hope you're enjoying some home-cooked meals and sleeping in your own bed. That's always a good thing. So enjoy that. Enjoy the game. And to you, the audience, thank you once again for your interest, your engagement, your questions, your support for Rugby Unity. It has been wonderful. We've only been going a very short period of time, but the audience is growing. The interest is growing. Wonderful feedback from the interview with Brett Robinson that was published earlier this week. So thank you very much for the feedback on that. And we'll continue to try to bring you the biggest names in the game as we all work together as a global rugby community to help support the future prosperity of rugby union around the world. So plenty to look forward to this week. But for the moment, please be kind to each other. I'm David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.